We're live. Welcome everybody to the Kinross-shire Committee of the 16th of May. I think what we'll start with is a round the table introduction of who's who, and perhaps Danny can also introduce himself because we've got some new faces. We've got Lee joined us, he'll introduce himself. I'm Dave Cuthbert, the convener, of course.
Hi, Lee Axton, my day job, committee planning team leader and strategy, people and resources director in the council. I was asked if I would be prepared to take up the role of lead officer in place of Mark Butterworth, who's now left the council. So happy to be here.
Did you volunteer?
I chose my words carefully.
Okay, thank you, Lee.
Margaret Ponton, I'm representing Glenfarg Community Council.
Sarah Bruce Jones, and I'm representing possibly the Community Council.
I'm Willie Robertson, one of the four Kinross-shire ward councillors.
Francis Finchbury Gillespie, I represent Cleash and Blair Adam Community Council.
Neil Bingham, Milnerthorpe Norwell Community Council.
Neil Freshwater, one of the 4 Ward 8 councillors.
Yeah, Richard Waters, one of the 4 Ward councillors.
Okay, Danny, do you want to introduce yourself and see if there's any apologies?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, convener. I'm Danny Williams. I'm Democratic Governance Officer at the council, and I'm taking over today. Taking over as the clerk to this committee. Apologies for not being there in person today and joining you online. But just to not, from my end, have not received any apologies, convener. I'm not sure whether you've received any or anyone around the table has any to add.
We're only missing one person. I think that's Phil Freeman from Kinross Community Council. So if he doesn't make it, we'll put his apologies in, but he may be late. He's often late. Are there any declarations of interest in any of the matters coming to the committee? No. Okay, I'm going to take the agenda points 3 to 8, and then Richard's going to take the Kinross-shire Active Travel Master Plan. He's the convener of Climate Change Committee, so it's tag anyway. So if we start with the minutes of the meeting of the Kinross-shire Committee of the 15th of February, are we all happy with that? Can we approve it? Yes, okay, that's approved. Moving on to the outstanding business statement. There's a few gaps in here. I think the first one, which is number 5 on the outstanding business statement, we can probably forget for just now. It's the additional training for teams. As we're meeting in person, it's less related to these. You're happy with that?
Yeah. I did ask, as we discussed this morning, IT if they had a short video that people could have a look at, which would guide them through the process of logging in. I've not had a response yet, if that doesn't share.
Okay, if you send it to me, I'll check it on to all the community councils, share it amongst themselves. The membership here does change on occasion. So, okay, planning enforcement session.
Yes, I contacted the planning team this morning just to ask what the situation was with that. I've not had a response yet. Okay, I'll continue to pursue it.
I think we need to get a date in the diary for that. And I think it should be for all community council members, not just the members of this committee. That's basic training in planning and so on, because there's been quite a lot of changes in the community councils. Okay, the next one was the evaluation findings.
Yeah, I spoke with Lisa this morning. She's more than happy to attend the next meeting in August and do it then or in November if that suits. Okay. If you'd prefer a date outside of the committee, find a date that met diaries, but she's more than happy to do that.
What do members feel? Should we do it at the committee meeting or should we do it as a separate meeting?
How long is it going to take? I think that's probably relevant to the decision.
Let's take 45 minutes, an hour.
What was that point? Sorry, convener.
Would you prefer to have it at the committee meeting? Or
So which the
this is it's basically going through the terms of reference, if you like, for the committee and what we can and cannot do and what powers we've got and so
right, like a refresher of the training essentially.
Well, it's to go through everything that we have certain powers. It's quite useful if everybody knows what they are and what to do, and then
Fair enough.
To be that, sorry, you know, to be that, I think if Lisa sent out a paper on what the powers are, and then prior to any meeting, it wouldn't take that long to go through it. There'd just be matters that people might want to raise
Okay.
in the paper. That would save a lot of time.
Okay, so your preference is to do it at
That's
the
a-
committee, but have a
yeah.
paper provided prior.
That's how I would do it.
Yeah,
Are we all
that's a
happy
good
with that?
idea. Yeah.
I think the only thing is the terms of reference which are buried in the scheme of administration for the council, is that right? So it's not necessarily apparent.
No.
It's not very easy to find, particularly, so I think that suggestion would be good.
Okay, so we're all happy with that. Okay, moving on from that, outstanding business statement number 8. It's actually quite good that Drew is here. This is the Kinross-shire Community Transport Forum. Basically, I want to arrange a meeting in the 3rd or 4th week of June. That's because the committee councils meet in the first 2 weeks. So I've got dates where ICT1, this room, is available, and I was going to do it as a hybrid meeting. So my question for you all is, I think you said you couldn't make it till the 20th. It's a June. Yeah. Still the same. People, I've got dates of the 21st, which is, I think, Kinross Community Council. So that's the 25th, 27th or 28th of June. 25th is a Saturday, so that's not much good. 27th, are we all placed for the 27th of June?
Is that Tuesday or
Monday.
Monday?
Excellent. June,
Oh, Thursday.
Is when we get an extension for submitting a response for the wind farm application, which is due on the 28th of June.
How do we all feel?
I would pencil it in just now anyway.
Okay, so we pencil in the 27th of June.
I think that would, yeah, suit tone.
Yeah, is that all right with you?
Yeah, what time?
7:30?
Mhm.
The reason I've been delaying on this one is I wanted to have something to talk about rather than everybody coming along and just saying the 202 is broken, doesn't work. So we have a little bit of movement in that direction, so we can raise that at that session. Okay. Outstanding business statement number 10, I think, is dealt with. The outstanding business statement number 11, I approached Jackie Pepper, who's the head of the Health and Social Care Partnership, and made the offer that we would put money towards advertising the jobs. Basically, she's come back and said that she didn't want to do that because they've got their own processes and procedures. So I think we can mark that as complete at this stage. The concept was to try and advertise in the local newsletters the jobs that were available, but if they're not comfortable with it for the Health and Social Care Partnership, I don't think we can push too hard on it. We're all happy with that. Margaret.
I think it's a shame that we can't advertise it in the newsletters. And is that because of the financial implication or just because they don't want to do it?
I think it's more a question of the procurement. They have to go through certain procurement systems, and to try and do that with lots of individual newsletters was going to cause a bit of confusion and problems. It's council procedures, NHS procedures. That was the rationale that was given to me. I think it's something we should still consider.
I think it would be a lost opportunity to reach the newsletter, get, the combined newsletters, not to use it as a vehicle for it. But
so is that, yeah.
Just going to say, I mean, the Health and Social Care Partnership, like the rest of the council, uses My Job Scotland as its default site, as a public-facing website. I can't see why there would be any issue with you to My Job Scotland site, or your newsletter, and just direct people to that. I think maybe what she thought you were suggesting was instead of, or as well as advertising on My Job Scotland, there was a separate advert.
Okay, that's the news to follow up then, Lee.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be absolutely fine.
I mean, in essence, what we were trying to do was get to the point where the newsletters got paid for it to help keep the newsletters going and so on. So that we would fund it from money this committee's got, so that then there's no cost to the Health and Social Care Partnership. But in essence, the Kinross-shire Committee is then helping to fund the newsletters that everybody distributes. That's the concept behind it. Okay. Yeah. We all happy with that?
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the point number 12, that's completed. And point number 13 is covered in the papers today. We all happy with that?
Yep.
And Danny, you can take off the ones that are completed on the list.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have people, I think it's Brian and Craig Daly from the road safety team. I've asked them to come along tonight because in essence there's delays on the delivery of the road safety projects in Kinross-shire. I wanted them to explain the background. So you want to take it from there, guys?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cuthbert, and thanks for inviting us along. I'm the Traffic and Network Service Manager, and I've got my colleague Craig Daly along with us. He's the team leader in charge of the team. So when we give you some background, and we're happy to take any questions, or if we possibly can answer them. If not, we can always get back to you following the meeting. So I think my role tonight is really just to give you an indication of the workload that the team has on, and the many competing demands on the teams. So that we have two teams that I think the work in the area that you're really interested in. One is the road safety team, and the other one is the active travel team. Now, when I say teams, the teams are actually made up of the following. The road safety team has one team leader, who's Darryl McEwen, who I'm sure you'll be well aware of, and Darryl does attend your meetings. But below Darryl, we'll have 3 technicians. Currently, we have 2 technicians because one of the technicians retired in March, and we've been unsuccessful at the first stab at trying to replace the technician. With 7 applicants for that post, none were suitable, and we're going to have to go out again. So that's a bit of a problem for us, for the road safety team. Below the 3 technicians, we have 2 technical assistants. In the active travel team, it's even smaller. We'll have 1 team leader, Blair Watt, and 2 technicians below Blair. So as well as the active travel inquiries that Blair's team deal with, he's also responsible for delivering in the region of in excess of £1 million worth of active travel projects throughout the whole Perth and Kinross area. So the areas of work, I think you're well aware of the road safety priority list, which Darryl and the road safety team are responsible for, and that list numbers in excess of 900 projects. And it seems to be every time we manage to get some projects off the list, they're replaced by more than we've managed to get off. At the ward meetings, we meet with the ward members every 3 months, and it's a rolling programme of meetings. And we ask the members to prioritise 3 to 5 projects in their ward. That means that over the course of 12 wards, the team are actively working on anything between 36 and 60 priorities from the road safety priority list at any one time. But over and above the road safety priority list, there are major projects that have been brought to the door, not necessarily by our wish, but by either national demand or local demand. The 3 major projects that the team's having to try and juggle just now are the 20 mph speed limit national strategy, the pavement parking ban and the mitigation measures that go with that, and also the pending opening of the Crosstay Link Road and the concerns that the communities have along both the A93 and the A94. So these are 3 major projects, and I'll give you a bit of background to them if you're not aware of them. The 20 mph speed limit, we're actively working with Transport Scotland just now, as well as all the other local authorities, to implement a 20 mph national strategy. And this will see 20 mph being introduced as the default speed limit on all unrestricted roads in urban areas by the end of 2025. All urban streets in Perth and Kinross have been assessed, and appropriate speed limits have been judged. There will be in the region of 105 new 20 mph speed limits across the whole Perth and Kinross area introduced as part of this project. But in the Kinross-shire area itself, what we will have is in the region of 14 new 20 mph speed limits. 4 of the existing 20 mph speed limits will be extended. So when added together to the 9 existing 20 mph speed limits, it will give us a total of 23 20 mph speed limits in the Kinross-shire area. And these all need to be in place, the new ones in place, by the end of 2025. The pavement parking ban, which you may be aware of, is a ban on people parking their vehicles fully on the pavement, or half on, half off the pavement. It was a massive project because we had to assess every street in the Perth and Kinross area. So for that, we actually brought in consultants to take this forward, and they've been working on that for the last year or so. They've almost completed their analysis of every street in Perth and Kinross, and they'll produce a report on that. We'll then discuss that report with the local members and agree the way forward. And it's anticipated that the council will be in a position to carry out enforcement on this pavement parking ban about October this year. The third major project that we have on our doorstep is the A93, A94 mitigation measures because of the opening of the Cross-Tay Link Road. It's been recognised that traffic volumes along these routes will increase when the Link Road opens in 2025, primarily along the A94 between Perth and Forfar, but we also see increased traffic levels on the A93 between Perth and Blairgowrie. To address these concerns and the additional traffic flows, a series of mitigation measures are proposed in each of the urban settlements, and these measures have two objectives: one, to reduce vehicle speeds, and two, to discourage any unnecessary commercial traffic using these routes. A series of public meetings have been undertaken in each village, facilitated in the main by the community councils and the members. And in each settlement is proposed to install ramps across the main road at the entrances to slow vehicle speeds, followed by a pair of speed cushions at regular intervals along the road to keep vehicle speeds down. 20 mph speed limits, vehicle activated signs and puffin crossings are also proposed to be introduced in these communities for those that currently don't have such facilities. And we're keen to introduce similar measures in every settlement so that drivers are provided with a consistent message as they travel along these routes. So in summary, I think the question that's been asked is that, has a decision been made to focus on these new priorities as opposed to delivering the measures that are identified on the road safety priority list? I can assure you that that is not the case. We have these to do as well as the local priorities. And I think we see the local priorities as our priority, and at the same time we're looking to deliver these national priorities as well. And the team will endeavour to do that as quickly as they possibly can. In order to do that, we're conscious of our existing staffing levels, and we're looking to bring in additional staff where we can. The road safety technician, we've had problems filling that post. We have engaged with Abertay University to discuss with them the possibility of engaging with their students and possibly advertising the post to try and tie in when their students come to the end of their course, which should be in the next month or two. We're hopeful we'll be successful with that and get a successful candidate out of that. Craig, who's on the call as well, has been working very hard behind the scenes to try and put together a business case to bring in a professional trainee, which is more of a grow your own as opposed to us trying to advertise and bring in somebody externally. We would hope to get somebody in. I don't want to put people into silos, but somebody perhaps who's just finished school, who wants a career, is keen and wants to get on, and we'll certainly give them the ability to do so. They would go to college and gain academic qualifications as well as helping us deliver some of the priorities. But Craig has also pulled together the package to bring in 2 summer students who should be starting hopefully the end of June, the beginning of July, and be with us throughout the summer. Again, the benefit is that they will get, they will develop, get some education as well as doing a job for us and getting stuff out the door. And I think the last one that we're quite excited about is a project that we're working with Abertay, where we're looking to perhaps get students to work with us through the course year. Clearly they can't do that Monday to Friday because they're studying, but instead of them working in pubs or restaurants or wherever they do, we're looking for them perhaps to work for us on a Saturday morning or a Saturday, where again they'll gain experience, but we'll also gain the ability to do more work. So every effort has been made to try and get additional resources to allow us to take on the challenges that are ahead of us in the next year or so. So I think that's a very quick whistle-stop tour, and apologise for that, but I'm happy to take any questions, and Craig's on the call as well, so we're both here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, before we move to questions, did you want to add anything, Craig, or?
No, I think Brian's covered everything there, really, to be honest.
Any questions, Willie?
Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you, Brian, for that run through of where we are. I've got a couple of questions. Does the do the mitigation measures in the A93 and 94, do they leapfrog, you thought, other things that people in Kinross-shire have been waiting for years and years for? Or will they run in, are you saying that these things might run in tandem?
Councillor Robertson, we have to say yes. The answer is we would look to run them in tandem. Clearly, some of the funding, we get funding, external funding from the Scottish Government to deliver some of the national measures, and there is a time limit on spending that, but that time limit is end of 2025, so there's not any immediate pressure on us to carry out that work. I think what we find in our line of work, we're used to working under pressure. The gun goes on the 1st of April, the new financial year. At some points we don't know what our budget will be for the next financial year, and we really have to get going to get works designed, procured and then delivered in what is the better periods of the year before we reach the winter period. So we're used to trying to juggle and deliver. So no, none of the national things will take over a priority. It's a case of us trying to deliver them all. And what I would point out is, as much as we're saying they're national directives, a lot of the measures that are being delivered, whether it's the pavement parking ban or the 20 mph national strategy, a lot of that work will happen in Ward 8 in Kinross-shire. So it's something that's going to happen on your doorstep anyway. And I do appreciate there are a number of projects that have been on waiting lists for a number of years. But again, that's where we find it works very well, us engaging with the ward members, for you to tell us what are the local priorities, and that's what we will endeavour to deliver.
Okay, thanks, Brian. The other question I was going to ask was, when will both local elected members and the community councils get to know what streets have been selected for the new 20 mph limit? I think you said there'll be another 14, am I right?
14 was the 20 mph speed limits. There was another new 14 number 20 mph speed limits will be introduced. What the plan is, and both of them are very similar, is that the plan is that really from probably late June onwards, we'll ask committee services to set up meetings with all the wards individually, so we can sit down for the 20 mph speed limits to go through what we've thought is professionally, with our professional opinion, what we see as being the most appropriate locations and the extents of those, and sit down with the members to say, are you happy with this? And hopefully the answer is yes. If not, then we can discuss and adjust as necessary, and then we'll get on and start delivering that. You then have to go through the legal process, and if there's objections to that, then ultimately you're back at committee trying to get a decision as to accept or set aside these objections. From the pavement parking ban point of view, the consultants project centre, they've pretty much, they had carried out their assessment. We identified some sites that they hadn't looked at, and we've asked them to look at that, and it kind of delayed it a bit, but they'll come back with a whole series of what we keep describing as hotspots, where it's identified that currently there are people parking on, fully on or half on, half off, and at some locations moving them off of there may cause problems, whether that's for emergency services or just simple servicing, the bin lorry getting down the street. What the plan would be is to sit down with the members again and say, look, these are the spots that we've identified. These are the mitigation measures that we feel are appropriate. Now, what we're asking at that point is, are you happy, if necessary, if the time comes, can we go ahead and proceed and deliver these? Because I think we're all learning from who's went before us, and Edinburgh City Council was one of the first to do it, but they learned very, very quickly that because they hadn't done the consultation side of things, where they found problems, and they were pretty much overnight having to introduce waiting restrictions, that's where they came unstuck. So what we want to do is to get all our ducks lined up, have everybody in agreement that only if necessary, and we're not saying we will introduce them, but if the problems do occur, then we're all ready to go, and we'll press green for go, and we can get the lining squad in to put the waiting restrictions in. So we're trying to get all the ducks lined up, get everybody in agreement in advance, so that we have a smooth ride with this. as smooth a ride as you can possibly have.
Thanks, that's been very, very helpful, but I hope you realise it takes about 3 years to get waiting restrictions put down in Perth and Kinross.
Thank you for that, Willie. You wanted to.
Yeah, thanks very much, Brian. And obviously, it's really good to get this context to the road safety delivery. It was just really sort of on the last point you made there. It's a bit of a daft question, because I didn't realise until this came through that it wasn't already illegal to park on pavements, and I always assumed if you did it, you could be penalised for it. So what is it? Just what I think you've kind of answered at the end of your point. What is it that you actually have to now do other than just penalise cars? You actually legally now have to sort of put signage up, and as I say, I always assumed, it seems really weird because I assumed for the last 45 years that it was illegal, and to suddenly have to go through this exercise when you're thinking, really, did anyone actually think they're not breaking the law when they park on a pavement? And it just seems a lot of effort. I realise you have to do it. I'm just caught.
Yeah, no, there's two parts to that. The first one and the easy one is up until December last year, it wasn't actually illegal to park on the footpath. The illegal part of it was to drive on it. Now that's the difficult part, and the police would have to be present when you actually drove on the footpath or when you drove off it, because that was the offence, driving on the footpath. It wasn't necessarily you parking on it, which seems crazy, but that's been the rule since many years ago. And the second part of it now is that has been decided by the Scottish Government that a bill was passed to say it is now illegal to park on the footpath. So it's a belt and braces, and it's really geared towards the more vulnerable in the community, whether it's somebody with a mobility scooter, whether it's somebody with a pram, whether it's somebody with a wheelchair. So that they've been given priority here, and really the directive from the Scottish Government is only in exceptional circumstances should there be a departure made from that. And we could be contested by the Scottish Government if we decided that we've got some footpath out there that's wide enough that we think that a car could sit on there, and as long as you've got 1.5 metres between that vehicle and a boundary, then that's acceptable. We need that. That's what we'd have to be looking for. Now, there's very few and far out there, and what we're being told by our consultants who've carried out the analysis, and we were lucky because we managed to get consultants who'd already done it for Edinburgh, they'd done it for Kinross-shire, and I think they'd done it for East Lothian. There was at least 3 authorities that they'd worked for before they came to us, so they'd learned before they reached us, and so we're getting a consistency. And the feedback we're getting through the regular meetings that we're having with them is there should be no exceptions in Perth and Kinross. So there's no reason for us to believe that there's anywhere out there that meets the criteria and people should be parking on the footpath. So hopefully that answers both sides of your query.
So if I can just come back, so what's the physical intervention that you're going to have to do? Is it you have to put barriers or bollards or signage? So
no,
other than
so there's no physical.
Yeah,
there's no physical deterrent. It's the deterrent is that it can be enforced and somebody can issue with a ticket.
So what's the task what's the task? What's the work that you've actually got to do? So I don't mean to be. What have you actually got to do that's going to take up time?
Yeah, so what we've got to do is find out where the hotspots are, where the problems are, what the capacity is on the rest of the road network, and in some locations people can actually park in their drive, but they perhaps choose to park outside their house, half on, half off, or fully on. What is the capacity on the immediate road network? Can it accommodate these vehicles being displaced? If we find there's sites where they can't be, what are the implications of that if somebody parking now fully on the road? Because people perhaps park half on, half off. I don't for 1 minute believe it's for the greater good of everyone else. It's so that their wing mirrors don't get clipped or that. So if they're going to park on the carriageway, what's the implications of that? If the road's wide enough to accommodate that, and that's fine, there's no great issue with that. We could just say, right, we'll just on we go. However, if the implications are that they do park on the carriageway and it may block it, in particular, let's say for a fire tender getting down that street, then we have to consider whether it's appropriate to allow them to park on the street, and it might be waiting restrictions that we have to impose. there may be some locations where we feel, well, actually, we could still allow people to park half on, half off, because it's so narrow and there's no place for them to be accommodated, the displacement of these vehicles. We may end up making some of these streets shared space, where we may end up putting speed cushions in to get vehicle speeds really low, so that it's safe for people with a mobility scooter to use the carriageway. But until we get the full report back from the consultants, until we sit down and absorb it all, and then be able to sit down with yourselves and say, look, these are the hot spots, these are the options, what do you think?
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. Okay, just before I pass it on to someone else, I just want to say that I think the parking ban is an excellent thing in terms of wheelchair users, push buggies and so on. I've got wheelchair users who contact me and say that they're stuck in their house because there's people parked either side of it on the pavement. So I think it's a good thing, no, Rich?
If I could just add, we've obviously everybody's learning from everybody who goes before us, and we've spoken at length with Edinburgh City, and I mean the size of Edinburgh, and you would imagine the problems that Edinburgh would have encountered. It actually wasn't as bad as they thought it would be. The perception beforehand was this is going to be really, really difficult, and it wasn't as bad as that. I know, speaking to my colleagues in Angus there, they've just started enforcing in Carnoustie, and if you follow social media, it's actually quite interesting. I would say 90+% of the comments on social media have been positive towards the introduction and the enforcement of it. So that's not the norm for us when we put something in. We normally get the kickback, but in this case, it would appear to be that the public out there are welcoming this. So hopefully that's the same in Perth and Kinross when we do get to that stage.
Thank you, Brian. Neil?
Thank you. Just a general question, and it covers both the 20-mile restriction and the parking, possibly in one answer. Areas which have not yet been adopted by PKC, where do they fall? New developments which I understand may not have a speed limit on them currently because they're not being adopted by PKC. One estate in particular has no pavements, it has service strips. How is that affected by parking on it? Because there's no pavements at the moment, people who are walking are forced to walk into the carriageway in front of the traffic because there's no pavements. That's part of the traffic calming measures or applied traffic calming measures. How is that going to be influenced by these measures?
Okay, sorry, I missed your name.
It's Neil Bingham.
Neil, hi, thanks Neil, thanks for that question. I mean, I think it's relatively simple in that if the road isn't adopted, then first of all, it's not the council's responsibility, but presumably if it's a new development, we may be in the process of adopting it, or down the line we will be asked to adopt it. I think that there's nothing stopping a private road being added to either the list for 20 mph speed limits or to the list for the pavement parking ban. And probably the easiest example to make it quite simple is Ninewells Hospital in Dundee. Back in the day when I worked with Tayside Regional Council, we were asked to introduce weighting restrictions within the curtilage of the hospital. That's all a private road network, but Dundee Tayside Regional Council at the time, they promoted an order to allow weighting restrictions to be placed down on that, and currently Dundee City Council will actively enforce that. So if there was some streets out there that are unadopted, but the residents wish that to be added, then that's something that can be done. If it's a new development, then through the adoption process, if we felt that we would prefer to have additional road safety measures, whether that's speed cushions. You said there were some streets didn't have footpaths. Presumably it's been designed as that, but we would have the ability to ask for additional measures to be provided before the council would adopt it, because it really doesn't make sense in this day and age for the council to go and adopt something and then have to use its own funds to add additional measures. So it makes sense to catch that before it's adopted.
Okay,
thank you. Thanks, Brian. Thank you.
Okay, the next one, thanks, Fran.
Thank you, yeah. It's a question. In Cleach, we have the sum total of 2 pavements. They're both very short, but we also have two large reinforced grass verges that one could mistake as pavements, but aren't. Are the grass verges that were part of a conservation project, are they affected by this rule, or are they just ignored because arguably they're not like a metalled pavement as such?
Yeah. Sorry, was it Frank? Was it?
Yeah, Francis.
Yes, Francis. Thanks for that question, which is possibly easy but difficult as well. I think without knowing the site, it's difficult for me to give you a qualified answer tonight. But I think the reality is, if it's not an adopted footpath as such, then that's not really what this is intended for. And I would suspect, therefore, it won't have been assessed. It won't be on our radar as a site that we would be intending to have included in the pavement parking ban or be enforced. So I think it would be touchwood safe enough. If that's where somebody parks, then it's not an area that we'd be looking to target. But it might be better if out with this meeting, if you're able to give us a location and even send us photographs of that, we can give you a categoric answer to that.
I'll do that, Brian. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's your question. You want to go now?
Yeah. Brian, thanks very much for that update. And it's encouraging to hear the innovative approach to deal with the staffing issues. And I think there's a real forward-looking element to that if there is not enough engineers and enough technicians out there, then grow your own. I think that's definitely to be commended, and it definitely gives younger people a real opportunity to get on a career with that. Brian, just about the process of dealing with the 20 mile an hour and the pavement parking, within the scheme administration here. They're supposed to be within the scheme administration, and it's just to ask that. I don't know whether where else within the council you need to take this for approval, but if it's the ability to kind of bring the papers when they're ready, or any decisions to this committee, so that decisions can be made here. And I know, and as elected members, I know all four of us are very appreciative of these meetings you give us on a regular basis to keep up to date with the safety list and projects. But I think personally quite keen that the scheme administration and decisions are made as part of this committee. And it was just to sort of see how that would fit in with the way you would expect the decision making within the council to go through on these two projects.
Yeah, I think these are quite different. In the pavement parking ban, the bill was actually processed and stamped in December last year. So really from December, if all the local authorities, 32 local authorities were in a position to have assessed and had the resource to enforce, then they could have done it from then. We could enforce tomorrow if we had the resource, and we've done it. We're trying to do it sensibly and walk before, or not run before we can walk. Get everything sorted out so we know where the problem areas are going to be. Discuss it with the members in the community. Discuss it with the residents in those streets to make sure that because in over 39 years of being in this industry, we come unstuck quite a lot, and we end up back at committee with objections. So I'm not saying we're going to get full agreement, but at least we'll get all these brought out before we reach the stage of actually implementing. Now, the difference in this case is that the 20 mile per hour speed limit is being promoted through a temporary traffic regulation order, a TTRO as we call it, where normally a 20 mile per hour, or 30 mile per hour, or 40 mile per hour is a TRO, which is a traffic regulation order. Now, the TTRO is a temporary measure, and it allows us to put something in place to assess it. But that may be 18 months or so, and towards the end of that period, we have to decide whether it's appropriate or not. And if it is, we've then got to promote the formal TRO, and that's then a permanent measure forevermore until we change that. Now, the process is that Fraser Crofts, the strategic lead, has delegated authority to approve these. Now, in this case, we would only be going back to committee if we have objections, because the national government have told us the default in these areas will be 20 mile per hour. The default is that you cannot park on a footpath. So that's new. That's the legislation. You can't argue with that. It would only be if we decided that we should have changes to that, we would have to go back to committee for approval, or if through the process of promoting the TRO that we had objections, we would be going back to committee to say, we've had these objections, we don't believe they're valid, we are asking you to set it aside, and committee would decide whether that's set aside or not. You would really need to speak to committee services or our legal colleagues to say where that goes, whether it goes to the E&I committee or whether it comes back to this committee. I don't have the answer to that, but we would only be going to committee to get a decision because there has been an objection.
Ryan, thanks very much. If there is no need to do any formal kind of committee stuff, would it be fair to ask that you just come back and give an update? I know you won't be able to come back yourself, but the team will be able to come back and give an update to this committee if and when the time is right.
Absolutely, but I think hopefully I made it clear earlier on that there's a long process to go through with both of these that impact on yourselves, but you'll be on that journey. I know that some meetings were set up for the first couple of days in June, and we had a discussion this morning about the progress with the pavement parking ban, and because the consultants haven't come back yet, we think we might be tight for that, and we're going to look to put those 3 ward meetings back. So in June, the Blair Watt and his team will actively be meeting with yourselves. So you'll in a number of weeks' time, you'll actually be in the loop and you'll know exactly what's happening in your ward. And that'll be the same with 20 mile per hour speed limit, where Darryl will set these meetings up. So you'll be in on that journey, and you'll be the decision makers as to we'll bring to the table what we think should be the case, and hopefully you're in agreement with that. If not, then we can amend as necessary. So it won't be a case that you're going to find out in October that that's the pavement parking ban being enforced today and you know nothing about it. You will be well involved before then.
Okay, thank you. You happy with that? Dave Morris?
Yeah, take you back to when you were speaking about the cross-day crossing, the cross-day crossing and the measures which are being brought into communities that might be affected by the cross-day crossing, and particularly reference to ramps and cushions, public crossings, etc. Just a bit puzzled. If you've got the entrance and exit of each community, why do you need cushions as well? Because with the ramp, you've slowed the speed down in vehicles. And then secondly, is there a change of policy here in that you're going to promote ramps in communities generally? Because we in Bournemouth have been very keen on that, and we'd like to see ramps used much more.
Did you get that, Brian?
I think I've picked that up, yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, I can expand again if I am. What we did was we met with pretty much every community up the A94 and the ones that are affected on the A93. We went in with some drawings that were shown as being draft drawings with suggestions, and what we came away from all the meetings was a consensus that they would like to have the ramps as you entered, and then series of cushions. Now that was pretty much universally agreed up the A94 with all these communities, which was great for us, because what we're trying to do is get that consistency so that the driver who chooses to use the A94 instead of the A90 to Dundee to Perth, and onwards to Glasgow, if that's the destination, we want them to try and deter them from using that route. But there's a consistency. Every time they reach a built-up area, they'll get the same message over and over again, and hopefully they choose to use another route. The reason we we've suggested and they have accepted the use of the ramps. The ramps were to bring the speeds down pretty much immediately as they enter the village. But what usually happens then is it's almost described as surfing, where they then pick the speed up again. So the cushions, the purpose of the cushions is to retain that lower speed along the built up area. And it is probably the best description. You're absolutely right. The A977 is very, very similar, and there's no reason why we can't roll that out. I think in the past we've been perhaps resistant to it, but it's probably been financially driven and we don't have the budgets to do that. Clearly we had the budget for the A977 mitigation measures, which is the best part of, I think, $750,000, and we've done a number of measures up and down that route, but there would be nothing stopping us down the line to start considering the A977 and having that consistency. Clearly all the A-class routes in the Perth and Kinross area that takes that volume of traffic, the A94 is the highest of them all, but takes that volume of traffic and the type of traffic, then we really, we would be quite happy to provide mitigation measures in these communities. So it's not a case of we've done it in A94, we won't do it anywhere else, or no, it's just as and when we've got the resource, whether that's staff resource or financial resource, we're happy to consider anything.
Yeah, there, I knew you'd come in. Sorry. It's from Fossaway.
Sarah Bruce Jones, I'm Fossaway, so I'm A977 and A91. Yep. It's taken us 14 years for the A977 mitigation to actually do this since the opening of the Clackmannan Bridge. And the mitigation measures were there stated to deter heavy goods vehicles from using the route from Clackmannan to Perth or Dundee, slow down traffic. They still aren't completed. The lights are in at Drum, but the speed limit hasn't changed. And what I'm also wondering is this has only just been finished. Has anyone yet done any assessment as to how successful the lights at Blaringon and the lights at Drum and the lights at Crook of Devon have done in reducing speeds and volume of traffic? Because in our opinion, as residents on those, the A977 and the A91, it hasn't. Traffic still speeds through. I mean, if I was to go back to the Fossaway Community Council meeting and say, we'd like to see a consistent approach to things along that route from Blaringon to Kinross, probably be laughed at, because we don't have that consistency along that route. There's different things at different places. So we don't know, do we know what actually works?
Right, okay, so I'm coming to the end of my time with Perth and Kinross, but one of the first duties I had almost 15 years or so ago was I had to go to a meeting at Fossaway Community Council, and at the time I think it had taken some like 5 years or so to get the funding to come through for the mitigation measures. During that period, a number of measures had been agreed. I was the postman who delivered the message that night, and I was sent out of the community hall with a flea in my ear and told not to come back, and if I did come back, to come back with another set of measures. So we had to go back to the drawing board. We worked with the members and the communities to find out what you wanted. VAS signs was a huge part of that, and over the course of the next number of years, we provided the measures that were requested by the communities, and we delivered them. We are coming towards the end of it. The last project that we had was the realignment of the B9097, I think it is, junction, but that's on hold until we assess the success or otherwise of the lights that were put in at Drum. And once we have assessed that, and I think the tubes have been put down before, I think Michael Finlay is in the process of assessing the after, and if it's found that that's been successful, then what the balance that was left in that account, it may be that the members choose not to spend that on the realignment of that junction, and they may choose to spend that on something else along the A977. So all I can say is that we have delivered what we were asked to deliver. It is a staff resource thing, There's no doubt about that. The team's a team of 5/6 who are responsible for the whole of the Perth and Kinross area. We've brought consultants in to do some of the work over the years, and that's been a use of an awful lot of money that we wouldn't have had to use if we were able to do it ourselves. That's the position we are. We're almost completed it, and once we get this latest analysis done, we'll be able to tell whether the signals at the drum junction have been successful or not, and you can tell us what you want done with the balance of the money.
Right, so I didn't mean to be negative, and I appreciate. Thank you very much for everything's been good. And I know I've got the meetings notes from that first meeting, but before my time.
I'm scarred from that first meeting.
Yeah, it's long before my time, but I can imagine I get scarred with every community council meeting that comes up. But thank you very much, Brian. I really appreciate it.
So any more questions? Right, I've got one question and a comment. The first thing is the question. I think it's probably for Craig. Actually, it's the software you were talking about, Brian. Is there any movement on that? This is a piece of software that allows TROs and TTROs to be done much quicker. Is there any movement?
I can take that, or Craig can, if I get it wrong, Craig can certainly correct me, but it's called StartMap. What it is again, we're having to look at innovative ways of working, because we really are struggling. I can't emphasise that enough. In 39 years, I've never experienced the pressure on the team like we have now. The demand from the public, community councils, elected members is far in excess as it's ever been. I'm not saying that's wrong, you know, really we are accountable, but what we're endeavouring to do is to bring in software, because we've fallen foul over the years of being single person dependent. Over the years we had Dave Duncan, he was responsible for waiting restrictions. Then with Craig Beattie, he was responsible for waiting restrictions. When both of these members of staff left us, we had no expertise, and we had to learn very quickly. And that's sitting now with Blair Watt, who's in charge of active travel, but he's having to do TROs. So the intention is to bring in this software at quite a considerable expense, but that software would allow me or you, who have very little day-to-day knowledge of how to promote a TRO, to use. Granted, they've got the skill set for using AutoCAD, but they'll draw a line on the map around the curb line, and that will churn out what the TRO legal gobbledygook is. So the team, Darrell's road safety team, the two technical assistants, they'll pick up a lot of that. So they'll be able to start churning out TROs without having to have somebody with a scientific knowledge of the TRO process. So it will also allow us to consolidate that. What we've got legal orders. And what you do over the years is you've say the 30 mph speed limit order, and we'll do a variation, and then next year we'll do another variation, and the year after that we'll do another variation. Before you know it, you've got the 1979 30 mph traffic regulation order variation 18, and our parking services colleagues, when they issue a ticket, that ticket may be contested, and they've got to try and find out what the legislation is behind that, and that makes it very difficult to manage. So we'll look to consolidate the orders so it'll become a 2024 or a 2025 order. It's all done on StartMap. Then that information is then available. So our parking services colleague, when they get a ticket that's queried, they can just hover the mouse over that section of the waiting restrictions, and it'll tell them that order was promoted in 2024, and it's the 30 mph speed limit order, or the waiting restriction order, or whatever. The hope would be that we can also make this available publicly, so that it can be on the council's website, and within reason, not all the detail, but something would be there. So you could, there's two sides to that. You can see what's in place, but also going forward for consulting and advertising, we can actually say, look, this is what we're about to put down in Crooked Devon. And you can see that, and people can comment. So rather than us saying, right, oh well, we did put a sign up on a lighting column and it was up there for 3 months and nobody said they were against it. In the modern age, you need to have different ways of consulting. So it's a software we think will be a huge benefit to us, and we're very keen to get that in place and get going with it.
And presumably that's on its way.
It's and Blair Watt again. I think the the last thing you want to do is to actually be helpful and take on something. Blair did that and become a procurement expert, which is a tortuous route to go through. So that's sitting with Blair, and he's dealing with our procurement team, because we can't just go to Curry's and buy something, you know, but we've got to go through a procurement process, and that there'll be like a small tender where software companies who produce this kind of stuff, they'll be able to put themselves forward and say, we can supply that for X thousand, and there's a tender process that you then choose somebody from that. So Blair's going through that just now.
Okay, thank you. For the other thing I had to do was to make a comment, which is to thank you for all your hard work. You're retiring after 40 years, and we really appreciate it down here. You've been always helpful and pleasant to deal with. So
thank you.
Thank you for that. And
yeah, thank you.
Anything else you've got to think?
Yeah,
with it.
Brian, I was actually really sorry to hear that you're planning to retire. Of all, we've got a number of very good council officers, but I have to say I always appreciated both your advice and your can-do attitude. You never said no. You always said there must be a way around about it to achieve it. You were a great. You were really quite enthusiastic about the introduction of green routes throughout Kinross-shire when I suggested it as a project, and you were very helpful in bringing it about. So every time I pass a green route sign, I always think of you. So you'll. So I hope you remember that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, are we all done?
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. You can go. You can stay. It's up to you. Well, move on to the next item if that's all right.
Okay, that's great.
Cheers.
Thanks very much. Bye.
We'll just move on.
I'm trying to restart itself. I don't know why it's done that. No idea.
Are we still recording? Audrey, Magda? It says live. So. Got an issue on screen.
You are still live in that we can hear you, but your feed seems to be frozen from the room, so we can't see you.
Should we try restarting it?
You could try that if you want to, yes.
Okay, and can we invite Jamie Smith back in, or can you get back in anyway if we turn off here and then back on?
I would advise against. My experience is that it can take a good 10-15 minutes to reboot.
Okay, we'll just carry on then. I'm happy with that. All we've got is a bit of a funny screen in front of us. That's fine. So shall we move on to the next item?
Jamie has a
Have you got presentation?
then.
See why not. Okay, so we'll move on to Blarington Primary School. Well, that's a verbal update.
Certainly. Yeah, I've got an update in 3 parts from the last committee meeting. Firstly, on the valuation side, I spoke with a colleague, Ashley Peace, in the estates team this morning to get the most up-to-date situation. So he's very exercised about this. The council was initially advised by the district valuer, who are a body that reports directly to the UK government, that they would have a valuation for the site by the 31st of January. Clearly, we're well beyond the 31st of January. At least 3 or 4 different deadlines have been agreed and missed. The district valuer has now been informed by Ashley that if the report is not available by next Friday, that we will be submitting a formal complaint. And if that still doesn't resolve the matter, then I'll need to look to potentially engage another agent to undertake that work for us. He's obviously very apologetic about it, but it's largely out of his hands. And when you're promised you'll get it in 2 weeks' time and it doesn't happen, you'll get it in 2 weeks' time, and before you know it, you're 2 or 3 months down the line. So yeah, I can only apologise for that. It will be resolved as quickly as possible.
And in the event that they don't come back, will you contact Fossaway?
Absolutely.
And they can then get their own.
Yep. They can get their own, or Ashley's happy to engage a private sector company to do it. That's happened in the past where the value has been available, but we don't understand what the delay is, and we've not been told, given an explanation as to why there's been such a delay.
Happy with that?
Yeah, that's great. I think people know about the Community Development Trust, isn't
Yeah.
of that, but they do have to get their own anyway, because for one of the grants, it has to be a second independent valuation.
Right.
For one of the grant applications. I think and as Scotland. I can't remember the name of the trust, of the fund, but
Scottish Land Fund.
that's the one, yes, yeah, they've been told they'll get funding for.
Okay, happy with that, everybody?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the second element of the update then is around the building condition surveys. And just yesterday we had an update from our colleague Ryan Graham in the maintenance, property maintenance side of things. The survey work on the buildings was complete and the updated reports were received yesterday. They've been passed on just, I think, either last night or this morning to the Development Trust. A few kind of qualifications about that before I say any more. They are based on council standards and council charges, and councils will tend to have to meet a higher standard than a community group will, and will often be charged more. So that needs to be taken through the provided. The guidelines for people that are assessing buildings in terms of the standards have changed. So what was once a C rating may now be a B rating. And it's got experience or history in that. They take that into account with the guidance for how you assess something that's changed. And the surveys are also based on the building being retained at school and previous use. So if the Development Trust takes it on and looks to undertake a change of use, which I'm sure they would, then that needs to be taken into account as well. The buildings themselves have been categorised overall condition B, with some Cs, which are areas that need some remedial work relatively soon. And the council expects that it would have to spend approximately £170,000 over a 5-year period to maintain it at its current level. But again, I would say that's meeting council standards and being charged council rates. Community group would likely get that cheaper and have to do less work. Pause there. Is that okay on the building standards? And so I should say that Ryan is happy to answer any questions that the Development Trust might have.
Yeah, that's, and Nicola was saying, it's absolutely fantastic feedback between them. So it's really, thank you very much for that.
Great.
Okay,
They're desperate to get their hands on that one.
Yeah.
We've got the next one.
And well, the last element is community asset transfer, and obviously we're aware of this, but the Development Trust, as has been mentioned, applying to the Scottish Land Fund for some funding to complete feasibility work, which would support any asset transfer request in the business plan. And I'm not sure what the timescale is for that, but there will be a deadline, I would imagine, to meet for the Scottish Land Fund, but you might have that information.
I haven't got it to hand, but Nicola's the person to speak to about that. She's the fount of all knowledge as Secretary of the Trust.
All happy?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, should we move on to the next one, which is the financial update?
Yep, very briefly, as you'll be aware, the committee's been given a discretionary budget of £40,000 in each of the last 3 financial years. £10,000 was left over from the previous financial year. So adding that on to the allocation of 40 for this financial year, there's an existing budget of £50,000.
Okay. The next one, South Kinross flood protections.
Could I ask a question on? It's really good to know we've got that money which we can spend in Kinross-shire. When are we thinking about opening applications for it?
Well, it's a question of what we want to do as a group. I think I would invite people to come forward with ideas. I think we did try to spend some on the active travel master plan, and obviously the funding came from elsewhere. I think it's projects like that that would make sense. It may be that we need to look at something like what does the community need? Perhaps use the money for a feasibility study or something like that. I don't know. Are you suggesting we turn it into like a fund that people can draw money from?
Well, I think it doesn't. The year goes past so quickly, and if there's projects out there that we can support and help with it, I think it'd be good if we knew what they were.
I think the only thing I would say is I don't know, is this recurring funding? I guess it stops this year, doesn't it?
I think it's non-recurring, but it's been repeated every year, I think, but I could be wrong.
It was awarded as non-recurring, so
yeah.
Once we've spent it, it's gone, and there won't be replacement funding coming in. I think
well, that's dependent on the budget, isn't it?
It does depend on the budget, but all I'm saying is that it's not guaranteed.
No, I know.
I was just wondering because on when we spent the money last year, we did it on the basis of applications that were received to the other funds, because there are already a lot of funds. We kind of know what people, we're promoting all these different pots. Some questioning is there a need for and that gave us the intelligence to know what was required to be spent. So I'm just wondering if that's maybe rather than opening up a separate application scheme, and if in the absence of any kind of consensus around the committee. Just a thought, yeah.
Question. We've all got hands up, right? Barbara first.
Can I just make a suggestion? I don't know how practical it would be, but listening to Brian with the issues he's got with things that we need to change in our communities, could we invest in the road structure, i.e. providing VAS signs or whatever is holding up the progress of the installation to communities needing these safety features that have been held up by finances for a long time?
Not sure. I mean, in principle, there's funding available to the road safety team, and quite often it's not fully spent, and that's because the team isn't big enough. So the real issue is the staffing, and as Brian was saying there, they're trying to look at innovative ways of getting around that. I don't know that us investing in a VAS sign would make any difference. It would still have to be them that did the work to work out how it's going to be done. We might pay for the sign and installation. So I'm not sure that would help, but
okay,
it's something to think about. Sarah, do you?
Let's just throw it out there. I think it was mentioned before. We applied for funding to get a new website. Would the committee consider investing in the community councils to improve their ability to communicate and engage with their communities? Because at the moment, most of us are reliant on either a monthly or bi-monthly meeting and a Facebook page that no one looks at. But we all need, if we all were able to have a consistent, effective website that we could share all this information that's coming through. I mean, there's so much information that comes through. It's how you get it out there to people. People don't necessarily come along to meetings to hear, they don't read minutes. But if you could put up something that's in PDFs or whatever it happened to be, reports that, so that we're making sure the flow of information that's coming into yourselves is then goes out to the whole communities.
I mean, everyone's coming up with ideas. I think what I suggest is that everybody emails me, and then I'll get someone to collate them into a report of the ideas that come forward, and we can discuss this in August. I'm just conscious that, you know, as we talk about, we come up with all sorts of ideas. Magda has suggested that or Danny has suggested we down the system and bring it back up again, and that will then allow the presentation to be made by Jamie, who's doing.
David Morris still wants to comment on this item if you want to finish this.
Yeah, I was going to take the end of this item and the South Kinross Flood Protection Scheme and then down the system. So Dave, do you want to?
This is one thing where travel miles. I was able to somebody to start the implementation of the ideas within the master plan, because there is a real risk that this master plan just sits there 3 years later and we're saying, well, there's no much have to along, and so I don't like the idea of people sort of beating housing for a little project here, a little project there. I've seen examples in the banking as well, where it just takes so much work for people to put all together these bits of money. So I'd rather see the money, so in a sense, go back into the council. Somebody extra and take this master plan forward.
I think that's a suggestion. If you could email that to me, like I said, then we'll collate all the ideas, and then we can have a discussion about it and pick the one that we actually prefer. Yeah, we'll happy with that. Shall we move on quickly to the South Kinross Flood Protection Scheme, and then we'll down the system and bring it back up again. Apparently it's something to do the hub that we use to join and leave the meetings, lost power, whatever that means. So we'll if you want to give us a brief.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm grateful to Rory Stewart and our flooding team who's given me an update to provide. So the scheme, as was discussed at the last meeting, was formally published on the 26th of March. There was then a period of about 4 weeks for any objections to come in, and 2 objections were received. The council has invited both objectors to come to meetings to discuss their concerns to see if any kind of agreement can be reached. But as you'll appreciate, timescales for that are unclear and largely dependent upon the responsiveness of the objectors themselves and their willingness to take part in any negotiation. If the objectors refuse to meet or refuse to accept the proposals that have been put forward, then the council has to inform Scottish ministers and would then probably need to appoint an independent reporter. And that process can take some months, so of course the council is going to resolve it. But once a conclusion has been reached, the process then moves on to the detailed designs stage and thereafter construction following any permissions and licenses that are required. But as the scheme was published prior to the government deadline, which was the end of March, the council has effectively got 2 years once those objections are resolved to then appoint a contractor. So that 2-year deadline flexes depending upon what happens with the objections. And Rory has said that he's happy to come to the next meeting in August if that's acceptable, and hopes to be able to provide a fuller update on the situation at that stage.
Okay, any questions?
That's really helpful what you said. I find that the South Kinross flood prevention scheme is a major thing, a major investment. It's going to allow the south part of Kinross to be developed economically. It's going to protect a lot of houses and businesses from flooding. I'm shocked that people can delay it, and that it can delay it for months. When, well, I think we've all been involved in the flooding issues at south part of Kinross, and I'm actually shocked that people. I hope we can overcome the objections. I'm just surprised that they can't actually stall the whole process for months.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, well, there's a wee bit of chat going on the line. They're suggesting we bring it back up again, because the presentation that comes with the final paper, and obviously we can't see it on the screen. So I think we'll try taking the system down and bring it back up again.
Okay. We're going to just call a 10-minute recess.
Yeah, we'll have a 5-10 minute. Oh, give it 10 minutes.
I was passed on a quick note from Elliot, just by way of introduction, if that's okay. But just to bring everybody up to speed, the council has previously appointed AIRUP to prepare an active travel master plan for Kinross-shire, which aims to identify and prioritise actions which will encourage people to take more active journeys, which can be walking, cycling, wheeling. And the master plan will also suggest actions to make Kinross-shire a more inviting, sustainable and attractive location for residents and visitors. So quite a lot to it. Once the master plan is agreed, projects would then be prioritised and delivered in a pragmatic way. Some might be straightforward quick wins, but others may also require some detailed feasibility and design work. It will take a bit longer. Jamie is attending and has prepared some slides to talk through, which hopefully everybody can now see on screens to take us through the draft. Is that okay?
Can you see?
Over to you, Jamie, if you're ready to go.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Lee, for the introduction. Thanks very much for that. So yeah, delighted to be invited along, and thanks very much for giving us the opportunity to do that. So yeah, Matt, just an introduction. My name's Jamie Smith. I'm a transport planner at AIRUP, and we were appointed by Perth and Kinross Council to undertake this piece of work, which was to produce an active travel master plan for Kinross-shire. So the aim of the master plan, I think Lee's already covered a lot of this, is to ultimately identify and prioritise interventions that would facilitate and encourage everyday journeys to be made actively within Kinross-shire. So the focus of this project has very much been on everyday journeys. The master plan also considers placemaking as well, to create more inviting, sustainable and attractive places for both residents and visitors within Kinross-shire. And the goal of the master plan is to develop proposals that will improve local environments, enrich quality of life for local communities and improve people's well-being by providing facilities that support active travel. And you can see within the diagram to the bottom there that the key stages that we have been working through as a project team over over the past few months, which will form the basis of this presentation. So next slide, please.
The next slide. No, not me. No.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so the first stage of the master plan was essentially to identify a number of objectives which would shape the master plan. We focused this around Scotland's national transport strategy and the 4 priorities within that strategy to deliver, with obviously a focus on active travel throughout Kinross-shire. So obviously the 4 priorities being taking climate action, improving health and well-being, reducing inequalities and delivering sustainable, inclusive economic growth. These objectives also closely aligned with key projects locally and regionally, such as the TACTRAN Regional Active Travel Network, which ARUP undertook on behalf of TACTRAN, and the Perth and Kinross Mobility Strategy, which ARUP undertook on behalf of Perth and Kinross Council as well. Next slide, please. So the early stage of the project was essentially to undertake a desktop study and also a site visit to inform the master plan. So a desktop study was carried out in a very structured and targeted manner at the start of the project. We were well aware when we started this project that there was already a lot of work ongoing within Perth and Kinross, TACTRAN, and also the Kinross-shire area itself. So for example, the Big Place conversation, the TACTRAN Regional Active Travel Network, as we've already mentioned, and also local and community action plans that have been developed for areas of Kinross-shire, such as obviously the action plan that you can see there, and also Glenfarg as well. A site visit was also conducted by the ARUP project team, including myself, in March, where we undertook observations across key locations within Kinross-shire, as you can see on the screen there. And those images there just provide a bit of a summary as to the types of observations that we realised within the site visit. So for example, potential barriers such as uncontrolled crossings with no tactile paving, and potential opportunities. For example, you can obviously see the placemaking opportunities in Milnathorpe there that we identified. So next slide, please. So following that sort of early baseline work, we then undertook a stakeholder and community engagement exercise, which was fundamental to this master plan and probably underpins the full master plan. We started off with 4 key stakeholder sessions, which we identified the stakeholders in collaboration with PKC officers and also the Kinross-shire Committee. So Councillor Cuthbert and Councillor Waters helped us through that process. Sessions were held online. We felt like this was the best approach. It gave us maximum flexibility in terms of there wasn't a need to organise a venue and find a suitable date for everyone to be in the room at the same time. So we felt like online was the best approach, particularly given the tight project timescales as well. So you can see the diagram there of the key sort of community groups that we engaged with. So Glenfarg Community Transport Group, the Kinross-shire Community Councils, we had a really good stakeholder session with them, Kinross Cycling Club, and also Tracks Paths Group, we had a really good workshop with them. We supplemented these key stakeholder sessions with an online community-wide survey, which was developed and shared by ourselves with local community groups, social media platforms, and we also used the Kinross Community Council newsletter to promote the survey as well. The survey was live for around about a month across March and April, and we received a total of 177 responses to the survey, which from our experience on previous projects I think is quite a healthy number, and we were quite pleased with that number in the end. And that image there just provides a summary of one of the questions that was asked and the responses that we received to that question. But obviously all of this detail is within the report and the appendices to see in more detail. Next slide, please. So following these sort of early stages of the project, we then identified a number of master plan interventions. So our job essentially as a project team was to then sort of distill all that information that was taken from all those key stages and develop an intervention long list, which would consider the key issues and opportunities that arose throughout the project stages. So those interventions, we split them up into different categories. So, based on, what stakeholders were telling us and our findings from the sort of early stages of the project, we identified a number of Kinross-shire-wide interventions. So these were, broader interventions that would have a sort of broader impact across Kinross-shire and, should be applied throughout the Kinross-shire ward. So, for example, speed limit reductions, and O'Brien, touched on that earlier within his section. Safe routes to school, the development of a mapping tool that potentially provides people with, access to existing active travel routes. All these broader interventions that would have an impact across Kinross-shire. And we also split it up in terms of location-specific interventions as well. These are interventions that were, mentioned during engagement sessions, etc., that we know a bit more detail about, and we could actually, split them up into different themes. So, active travel routes, active travel junction and crossing improvements, placemaking and community facilities, and also parking and road network improvements as well. And also from these interventions as well, we identified and extracted a number of quick wins, which were interventions that we felt could be delivered by Perth and Kinross Council and delivered at a relatively low cost within a short time frame as well. So next slide, please. So the next stage after that, we ended up in total with around about 50 interventions, which is obviously quite a lot of interventions. So the next stage of the master plan was to undertake a prioritisation and phasing exercise, which would ultimately prioritise this intervention list and inform the delivery of the master plan moving forward. So this consisted of the development of a prioritisation criteria, which we used to prioritise the location-specific measures. We did this because the location-specific measures, we had a lot more detail around things like, land ownership, cost and funding, etc. So, it made sense for us to prioritise those interventions as part of this process. So you can see on the right-hand side there, the key criteria that we used for this prioritisation exercise. I won't go into this in too much detail because obviously it's in the report, but I'll just provide a bit of a summary. So each intervention was scored high, medium or low against each criteria. So, low being obviously, it scores poorly against that criteria, medium being it scores okay, and high being it scores well and aligns really well with this criteria. So, following this prioritisation scoring, the location-specific interventions were then split into 3 different phases. So that would then inform the delivery moving forward. And each phase is summarised in the bottom right table there. So you can see, phase 1 is the higher priority interventions that scored high in the scoring exercise. Phase 2 being the sort of medium, middle of the road sort of priority interventions, and phase 3 being the more lower priority, bigger ticket items that maybe need to be worked up in a bit more detail. So yeah, next slide, please. And this slide here just provides a summary of one of our mapping outputs. You can obviously see all the mapping within the report, but that just provides a bit of a summary of phase 1 of the master plan. So you can see we've kind of split it out into different areas of Kinross-shire. You can see various interventions that we've identified within Kinross and Milnathorpe. We've also identified some in Glenfarg and Kinneswood as well within phase 1. But in phase 2 and 3, obviously you have a geographic spread across the whole of Kinross-shire. So next slide, please. So hopefully that provides a bit of a summary of a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the master plan and the work we've undertaken to date. This slide here just provides a bit of a kind of summary and next steps on the project. So, given the scope and magnitude of many of these interventions, we believe that the master plan would be developed and implemented over a 15-year timescale. That this is due to A, the number of interventions there are, and B, the nature of those interventions. So there's a lot of potentially bigger ticket items that will take a number of years to deliver. In terms of next steps, they'll vary based on the intervention. So, many of the quick wins that we identified could be potentially progressed by the Perth and Kinross Council Traffic and Network team. Things like dropped curbs and tactile paving. These kind of smaller scale interventions. Whereas other interventions, bigger ticket items, like I've said before, will require further feasibility work, potentially engagement with landowners, and technical approval processes to progress further. We've also identified some potential funding sources. These are obviously, subject to change. The funding landscape is forever changing within transport. So we have identified these as indicative within the master plan. So, obviously local Perth and Kinross Council funding, potentially some regional TACTRAN behaviour change funding could be used. And also there's a number of national funding sources as well, like, Sustrans National Cycle Network funding, Sustrans Places for Everyone funding, and also the relatively new Transport Scotland Active Travel Transformation Fund as well. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. So thanks very much for listening, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed working with the committee on this project and PKC officers. So yeah, thanks very much, and happy to take any questions on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. It was a pleasure working with you as well, going through it all. Just before we start off, there were some issues with Portmoak on the consultation, and it was just maybe to ask if you can have a wee separate call with them at some point, Jamie, just to see if there's anything you can get fed in from them, so that they can have their little bit, their say in what's happening. Just ask if any. One other background with this, just to add, is the council's draft mobility strategy has just been before council, and I noticed in your presentation you referred to that directly, and it just to let members of the committee know that is out for draft, and it should be coming out for consultation imminently, if not already out. There's an 8-week consultation period, but it's very, very relevant to this paper. Any questions?
Sorry, Councillor Waters, I was actually just going to jump in there just on the Portmoak issue, if you don't mind. Yeah. I was made aware of this afternoon, and I think there has potentially been a little bit of a mix-up in relation to my email address, which is why I haven't received any correspondence from Portmoak. I think there's maybe a typo in my email address from looking at the email correspondence, which is why no emails from Portmoak came my way. So yeah, I can only apologise for that. And yeah, I'm happy to pick up any feedback that they might have on the master plan. So yeah, I thought I'd just clear that up. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. Dave?
I was just going to ask, in terms of the timescale on this, you said there was a tight timescale. This is a draft you put out tonight. When do you need comments back, and when do you hope to get the sort of next version out to us? And how late can we leave coming back and saying that's okay? So what is the timelines?
I think that Elliot would potentially be better to answer that specific question in terms of timelines. I think we agreed at our progress meeting this week, the 24th of May, for any comments to the master plan, for them to be sort of consolidated and combined together. That's kind of what we agreed with Elliot. So yeah, if we could work to that time scale, and obviously further on from that, it depends on the nature of the comments, but we'll be looking to close this out after that, fairly efficiently. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, it might be worth just clarifying that with Elliot. But yeah, I think we were aiming for the 24th of May for the final comments.
Okay, so if everyone takes a note of that, can you acknowledge emails when you receive them, so that people are aware that you've actually received them? Because obviously with a tight deadline, and if there's been a problem with Portmoak, if they don't get a response back, they'll know it hasn't got through.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Thanks.
Just before we go any further, just ask the committee that while Margaret is representing Glenfarr Community Council, just to ask committee if you're happy and Drew as the Glenfarr Community Transport Group representative, if it's okay to ask questions, if everybody's happy with that. Drew.
Basically, I really commend the work that's been done, and I really appreciate it. But it was just a quick question about, I think if we then go back to Kinross-shire Committee meetings 2 or 3 years ago, before this work was done, there were comments about trying to develop an east-west and a north-south active travel, walking, sort of cycling path. And I think I struggled to see where in the plan that might be highlighted, because I think that it would be quite an expensive, according to the scoring, I think it would probably come off quite poorly. But I think it's quite a high priority to have a high level strategic route, which might take 20 or 30 years to develop, but to actually have it marked on a map as saying this is a long-term hope that we'll have that as the east-west corridor and that is the north-south corridor. Where would that fit into the plan longer term?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in terms of east to west and north to south, you know, from memory, we do have proposals to improve the national cycle network, for example, from Glenfarr to Kinross. So that would potentially cover part of the north to south element. We've also got a proposal from, you know, Kinross to Kelty, connections to Fife. So again, that would be a north to south. And I think we've also got proposals from Fossaway to Milnathort and Crook of Devon to Kinross along the A977. So yeah, but we do have, you know, specific routes that we could consider to be north to south and east to west.
I'll just go see them, Jamie. I'll have another look. But the other one was the one north of Glenfarr through the tunnels as a sort of strategic route for future development. We highlighted that in our session with you. So I don't know if that's in there somewhere. I think it is mentioned in our part, but it was just to highlight that it would be good that that's easy to find.
Yeah, I think that's something that we did consider, but we realised that the Glenfarr tunnels actually fall outside the Kinross-shire boundary. So that's why we decided in the end, you know, we weighed it up and decided not to include it within the sort of final sift, if you like, because of that reason, really, the geographic reason of it not actually being within the specific electoral ward of Kinross-shire. I think it falls on the neighbouring electoral ward. So, but yeah, we can certainly take a look at it again and have a think. But
sorry, Jamie, just on that one, you know, part of the remit was to kind of try and connect across the borders to Clarks and Fife, but you know, with connecting that to Perth as well would be important. But it would be good if we could have another wee look at that and just see if it's just at a very high level could be.
Because it's the Aberargie to Bridge of Earn route that it would link into, and that would be a really good sort of longer term project. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. We can take a look into that. Thanks.
Well, one of the difficulties of not being able to communicate with you is that we have all these ideas we're going to be brought to you on March the 27th, either by myself or by our chair. Slight so disappointing now we're right up against this really tight deadline. And I just reinforce what Drew said, that it's exactly what one of the issues that we were raising, that we really want a proper strategic route which runs right the way through the Kinross-shire and connects with other places. And, you know, fundamental thing that is missing from the report is any reference to Westfield. Now, the Westfield developments now of the old open gas mine side, it's probably the biggest business stroke, commercial stroke leisure development in the last 30 years, affecting Kinross-shire. It's just over the border in Fife, but the vehicle transport routes into that development of the waste incineration plant are along the B9097. And we've been arguing for years and years. this plan should not open until there's a proper segregated walking and cycling route. Now, your report does touch on that in terms of the 90967 to the east of the M90, where people are obviously saying they want a segregated route there to connect to the villages to the east. But what is really, really urgent is on the other side, on the west side of the 9097, to connect into Westfield. So, and we had a report, you know, which was funded by the Westfield people, which we worked on for quite a few years. And this needs to be built into your report, and I'll send all this to you. And then you see, when you're talking about strategic routes, the 911 from Milner forward, clearly your report includes a need for a segregated route between Lochleven's Larder and Milner forward. And then there are certain sections from west of Algedy through to Scotland Well, which need to be filled in. But the really important missing link is from Scotland Well to Leslie. It's no good being able to cycle or walk from Milner forward and get as far as Scotland Well, but then you can't go on from there. So there are these two major strategic routes which need to be built in on the A9-111 and on the connection from the motorway to Westfield. And we also mentioned the Glenfarg route, and you'd quite honestly be crazy if you didn't connect through the tunnel in Glenfarg, because we know that the study, the background study of the other side brings a strategic route as far as Bridgewater, and this is the obvious next bit to connect through the tunnel straight into Glenfarg. But I'll send you all this stuff next week, but it does require a fair bit of work, I think, to get the report into its final shape. And if it has to go beyond May the 24th, well, it's okay by me, because we need to get this right, you know, given how many years it's going to be the lead document.
Well, thank you, Dave. Jamie, any?
Yeah, thanks for so that was Dave, wasn't it? Yeah, thanks for your feedback, David. Really appreciate it. And yeah, sorry about the mix-up in relation to my email address. I'll make sure to send you my actual email address. I think you said Arab rather than Arab, and that's why it didn't get through to me. But so yeah, we can clarify that offline. But yeah, in relation to your comments, certainly the Westfield development, we can take that one away and have a think about how we can incorporate that into the master plan. You know, if that's going to be a sort of future area of growth within Kinross-shire. With regards to I'm trying to remember all the kind of points you were saying there. In terms of the B9097, we have proposed some, you know, sort of parking and road network improvements on the B9097, because we had to consider within this master plan feasibility as well. You know, in terms of, you know, things like land ownership and you know, gradients and things like that kind of came into it as well at a high level. So you know, we have proposed something in that area, and there was another area as well that you were talking about that we've also included as well within the master plan. But certainly the Westfield element, we can take that away and incorporate that into the master plan.
Yeah, one useful thing about Westfield in this report, we made reference to the SEPA Scottish Enterprise project area, because the Lochleven and the catchment all the way down to the coast is inside this 10-year sustainable development project. So that's potentially an important source of funding to implementation of this whole master plan in Kinross-shire. So I'll again mention that in my response to you.
Thank you, Dave. Any further questions? Neil?
Just one, if I could, convener. Thanks, Jamie. Hi, it's Neil Freshwater. I know I sent you an email, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and often it's a great report, and often when you see the report and read some of the comments, you start sort of thinking again, and it was just to kind of, I suppose, add to the the discussion was the option of the extension to the Cricket Devon Aldi road, because I suddenly had never really seen it as a strategic route, and I don't know whether it could be classed as a strategic route. But if it was to be extended to Carsgarry, you've suddenly got a walking and cycling friendly route from Kinross to Cricket Devon. And I noticed, sort of just reading on some of the comments there, but I don't know, Jimmy, if you had a chance to look at that just I wasn't sure if I'd missed anything on that, or whether that had been included in the report or not.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Freshwater. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I saw your email come through this morning. I had a quick look actually, and yeah, we'll certainly have a look at that as a project team. In terms of whether that sort of fits with the kind of strategic thinking around the master plan, but it does seem like it's potentially like a sort of missing link, if you like, within the area. I'm not sure in terms of things like land ownership and feasibility, etc. of that, but we'll certainly have a think about that as a project team. In terms of that area, the main thing that we've included is some improvements and also some parking and road network improvements along the B9097. So those are the kind of main measures within that area at the moment. So yeah, we can certainly have a think about that one. But I think it's important to note that any changes that we make at the moment, they will have to go through that sort of prioritisation process as well, to make sure that we're, making sure that it aligns with the rest of the master plan as well. So that's just a little side note in relation to making any changes. So so yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Willie, you want to come in?
Yeah. Hello, Jamie. It's Willie, Councillor Robertson here. As you know, I chair the Tracks Committee. I was just going to say that Tracks have actually done quite a lot of work in the past trying to link Drum and Cricket Devon into Kinross via the old Devon Valley Railway line, but for various reasons it's not been progressed. One of the difficulties we have is that Sustrans will only help to pay for a path if it's 1.5 meters wide, a tarred surface, and that means it becomes very, very expensive to put in. So like a normal gravel cycle route is not acceptable to them. So we had money in place to complete a section leading to Balado, which the residents there wanted, and we couldn't proceed with it because we couldn't get enough money to put a tarred surface down. So there's difficulties often to make links because of the way Transport Scotland and Sustrans view these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Robertson. That's yeah, I appreciate that in terms of the the potential sort of difficulties and challenges in relation to feasibility of different routes. In relation to Sustrans, they have to follow, and Transport Scotland, as part of the Active Travel Transformation Fund and Places for Everyone, they have to follow the Cycling by Design guidance, which is quite strict in terms of widths of cycleways and things like that. So yeah, that's something that we've considered as part of this master plan as well. Would this be able to fit with Cycling by Design in terms of width and attractiveness and the sort of design principles associated with that. So yeah, that is something that we've tried to account for within the master plan. So yeah, it is a challenge, but yeah, and we've tried to kind of incorporate that into our approach as well, in terms of there's no one size fits all here. Some of the routes are on roads, national cycle network improvements. Some of the routes are completely segregated from traffic, high quality, that would probably cost quite a lot. So yeah, we've tried to kind of make sure that there's no kind of one size fits all in this approach, and we've got an approach that works for the whole of Kinross-shire.
Can I just make one final comment and say that it's really exciting for me to see a Kinross-shire active travel master plan, and I'm really pleased that the work that the Kinross-shire Committee has done in helping to bring this about. So thanks for that.
Jamie, just probably a question that's maybe more for Ben Wilson and our development team, but I'm going to ask you at first just to see what your thoughts are on it. NPF 4 and policy 13 is very much about, in development should be adding active travel or enhancing active travel infrastructure within an area. If an area had an active travel plan like this, when you get to, I know LDP3 shouldn't repeat what's in NPF 4, but is it possible, have you come across anything within your travels where a council are then able to use a plan like this to get developer contributions to help fund the implementation of it, given the nature of their work and that it hits all the proper criteria you need to do?
I have actually, and it's also publicly available. I was involved a number of years ago in a project in the Highlands and Islands, where, for the Inner Murray Firth area of the kind of wider Inverness area, where we identified a number of active travel interventions, and we tried to sort of tie them up with developments, if you like, to potentially help with, Section 75 applications and developer contributions. So our master plans that we developed for, towns within the wider Inverness area, so Dingwall, Nairn, all these types of places, our master plans actually fed into the LDV process. So, all those documents, I'm happy to take it offline and share with you, but they're all available online on the Highland Council website. But yeah, that's probably the main example in terms of how we use the active travel master plans to help influence the local development plan and potential developer contributions. So yeah, happy to have a chat about that in more detail.
That would be, I appreciate it, Jamie. That would be really good taking that forward. Any further questions?
Sarah from Fossaway. One of the comments that's come back from some of my fellow councillors is doesn't seem to be an awful lot about the west of Kinross-shire, and we talked about in that workshop about the fact that people who are in the west of Kinross-shire, a lot of them have to go into Clackmannanshire for their services, doctors, dentists, schools, whatever. I don't know if I just missed it in the report, but it doesn't seem to be very much going past Crook of Devon.
Yeah, so we've got, it wasn't something that came through it came through obviously from yourself in that key stakeholder session that we had, but in terms of the survey and other discussions, it wasn't something that came through quite as strongly, but we have addressed that comment through use of the old railway line. So we've proposed an off-road high quality active travel route using the old railway line, from that sort of is it Rumbling Bridge to Dollar. Yeah, so we've addressed that kind of comment that was made. So yeah, we were hoping that would potentially address the that sort of desire for that connection, because I do remember you mentioning about shared services between Clackmannanshire and Kinross-shire in terms of healthcare, etc. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. And I do believe we also had a high quality active travel route along the E91 as well. It didn't score particularly well within the prioritisation, just because of the work that would be required to actually deliver that, engagement with landowners and buy-in, feasibility, in terms of planning applications, etc. So yeah, but it has been considered. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. It does. Thank you.
Any further questions? Can I come up with just a discussion point within the committee as where we go from now? I think we're all keen that this isn't just an end to what we're going to do, and it's how we take it forward. And just to ask permission of the committee that Dave and myself, meet with Ben Wilson and the LDP team to take forward the potential and look at the potential from an NPF perspective that we can maybe try and get this built into LDP3 so that there is contributions come in that allows a continual workflow to go forward this. And also, and in relation to Dave's comment earlier on about that maybe part of that 50,000 could be used to take it to some of the bigger projects and feasibility studies and more work done on them, whether maybe some of that can be looked at to take that forward. And we have Dave and myself again, chat with Elliot, chat with Jamie and other people and other, Fraser Croft and David Littlejohn within the council and see how we can potentially take forward within that avenue as well with the funding there. And then feedback to the committee on any proposals for decision, that just so we ensure that this won't just be a document that sits in a drawer from now on, that it will be an ambition for this committee and for Kinross-shire and Glenfarg to actually see the planning plan well.
Yeah, what you just suggested is a good idea, I would say, because it's actually very hard to get money for feasibility studies.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing sexy about a feasibility study. You can't walk along it or cycle on it or climb over it or do anything with it. So I think that's a good idea. I know if we as a committee can actually give some funding, often if you're doing a feasibility study, you can get money from other sources like Track 7 money from the Guarantee Trust and from the Kinross-shire Committee and also from the community councils and different things. So you can actually attract other funding in, but I think that's a good way. And you can't go anywhere until you get a feasibility study done in any project.
And I think of this when you're saying, I think involve TACTRAN in it as well, these discussions, because they're I think TACTRAN are 1.8 million they're getting for this year for behavioural change. So I'm sure there's quite a few in there, Jamie, that could sit under that criteria. So it would be good to have a further chat with them on delivery, but just to have a look and see how we deliver it as well once. And it would be good to get the discussion started earlier.
Yeah, I think in terms of where we are, you need comments, Jamie, by the 24th of May. I said that. Presumably, you'll then look at the report and make some tweaks and changes.
Yeah.
And then you'll distribute it to us, and we can send it round to the members of the committee. Is that right?
Yeah. I think that's the kind of general plan at this stage. To do just that. And yeah, I mean, we are kind of reaching the end of our commission, if you like, with the Perth and Kinross Council. So yeah, I think that's something we'd be keen to do, and make those kind of tweaks and changes, if you like. I think we've got a good strategy there. It's just a case of making some final refinements at this stage.
Okay, and if we bring it back to the August committee meeting, just to verify everybody's happy and just okay. And I think what I said earlier, people can email ideas for the 50,000, and your concept of looking at feasibility studies that can deliver some of these projects potentially can be one of the things that the 50,000 could be used for. So we'll deal with that in the August meeting. Okay.
I think just purely from a personal, selfish perspective, I think it'd be great to see the momentum continued on this master plan. I think it's been, particularly from the key stakeholder sessions, it was great to see the sort of passion that everyone had for making change across Kinross-shire, and I think there's real potential to continue the momentum and deliver real change within Kinross-shire. So yeah, so purely from a personal point of view, it'd be great to see that momentum continue.
Jamie, really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure working with you and chatting with you, the way through this project, and I think the community engagement from what you've done from a community engagement perspective, I think it's been first class, and it's been great. And I know there were some problems with Port North, but that aside, the general engagement across and within the groups has been exceptional. And it's good to see the storing, and will certainly give us something to build on within the area, and which is reassuring.
that we've got to this stage. So thank you very much for all your input.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks very much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
And thanks for attending the meeting.
Yeah, everyone happy that you can go now? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. You don't have to stay anymore. Thanks, Jane. Okay, I think that takes us to the end of the agenda. I don't know if any, has anyone got anything else they want to raise? It's urgent or no? Okay, it's the end of the meeting, and the next meeting is on the 15th of August, I believe, where we will discuss the things we'll discuss. Okay, good. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thank you very much.